Hey friend, today we are going to paint this watercolor galaxy of Tunnel View in Yosemite National Park. I cannot wait to paint this painting with you. So without further ado, let's get started. So for today's tutorial, my paper is a size 5x7 that I've taped down. I'm also going to be using sizes 2, 4, and 16 Princeton round brushes. I will also be using a sponge brush to get some watercolor washes. And the colors that I will be using today are by Winsor & Newton, and we've got Veridian, Aqua Green, Purple, Payne's Gray, and Ivory Black. But feel free to use whatever colors you have on hand that are similar to these. To get started, I am going to do a wash of water on my entire paper. And we are going to get started with the galaxy first, which is my favorite part. I love watercolor galaxies. They are so oddly satisfying to paint. Okay, so we're going to start with our lighter colors first. So we're going to be starting with Veridian Green and Aqua Green. So I'm just going to take my size 16 brush here, and I am going to just do kind of a blotting motion with my brush. I'd like to paint the Milky Way kind of slightly angled in the left direction here. I'm leaving some kind of white space as a highlight in some areas. And I like to have kind of a funnel of white to start as I'm building my galaxy, because this is going to be the main highlight. I'm just going to drag some of this lighter color down below. And keep in mind with the galaxy is that as your page dries, it'll lighten some of the pigment. The paper is extremely absorbent, so just keep that in mind, that you may want to work a little bit darker than what feels normal, just because of how much it'll lighten up as it dries. Next, I'm going to start applying my Aqua Green. And if you notice here, I'm using the belly of my brush. I'm not so much using the tip like this. We really want to utilize the belly of the brush to get these nice kind of organic brush strokes. It's very whimsical. And now I want to go back in and add and overlap some Veridian Green with some of the Aqua Green. Now I'm going to just start building the value of our color. While this center is still wet, I'm going to rinse off my brush and just use mostly just water here. And with my damp brush, I'm just going to softly bleed in and pull some of the pigment on the outside of this highlight. Okay, and while it's still damp, I'm just pulling from this Aqua Green over to the side, and I'm just gonna do a few dots in a row at an angle, kind of maintaining this movement up towards the sky. And if the center takes over too much, you can always lift the paint with your brush if needed. Okay, now I want to go in and add some purple. So I'm just going to do a couple areas of this nice vibrant purple towards the left and the right. I'm going to rinse off my brush and just help kind of blend it softly. I'm going to take a little bit of this blended purple that's kind of meshed with the Aqua Green and just add another layer of dots in this Milky Way. Maybe bring some in towards the outline of it. Okay, so next, I'm just going to kind of soften this area here because we will have a pop of a highlight for the silhouette just above. We'll have a highlight above the silhouette of Tunnel View. Okay, now I'm going to work with some black here, and I really want in the outer corner areas this pop of black that's going to bleed and blend with these colors, and that's just going to add a really beautiful contrast to the galaxy. And once we add some of our white stars, which I'll be using white gouache for the stars, or you could use white acrylic or even a white chalkboard marker with a fine tip would also work. But the black's gonna make those stars definitely pop. So just like we did before, I am gonna repeat that step where I just add a little bit of the darker color we're working with to build the center of our Milky Way. I'm now going to take a little bit of Payne's Gray, which is a really beautiful navy, and I'm just going to apply a few bits of Payne's Gray. And if your paper starts to dry on you, you can always reapply some more water, but hopefully with a nice saturation of water, it's still damp, but you can always build and add more as needed. Now I'm just taking some of our lighter colors we worked with, and I'm just going in, layering as needed. The tricky thing with galaxies is not to overwork it too much. I'm going to add in just a bit more purple. As the galaxy bleeds and dries, you can kind of see what color maybe disappeared a bit as it bled out. So I just want to get a few more pops of purple in there. And already our black is starting to lift, so I'm just going to add a little bit more black towards the upper corners here to make that really have a beautiful contrast. Okay, so down below here we will have our silhouette of tunnel view. So that'll be mostly Payne's gray and black. But before we get going on that, I'm just gonna let this set and dry before I overwork it too much, which can definitely be a hard thing to not do with galaxies. So once you've got your color laid out, time to step away, just let it dry, and we will move on to the next step of the painting. Okay, so now my galaxy is dried, and next I am going to paint the silhouette of tunnel view using just some watered down Payne's gray. And to start, I'm going to start with just the swooping line that's kind of starting from midway towards the left side of the page and swooping down. And from there, I'm just going to carry this line over and bring it back up. And again, these are just really loose, rough sketch lines. Okay, so from here on, we are going to start with just doing a light sketch of a slightly curved line, just like so. And then from here, I'm gonna let it slope down slightly. From there, I'm going to do just a dash line that's vertical. And then from there, I'm going to do a slightly angled line towards the right and connect it down towards the bottom. Here, I'm just going to do the outline of El Capitan by carrying this line over, and it's slightly angled towards the right. Then from here, I'm just going to start just slightly downward from this line that I just did, and then do a dash line angled up, a little bit of a horizontal line, and then ever so slightly, we're going to sketch just the top of Half Dome, starting with this dash line here, doing kind of a subtle rounded curve like so, bringing it slightly down. And then from here, I'm going to do a raised angled line. And then we have some higher cliffs here. A couple kind of hill-like silhouettes there. And then I'm going to bring it slightly down and swoop back up. So this is a very loose, kind of rough sketch. Right around where these cliffs are, I'm going to paint just a angled line that's going towards left and bring it back down. And in this area here, we will have a tiny little waterfall eventually. But this is our rough sketch, and a lot of this is going to be really deep in color with the Payne's gray and the black. But we're going to start with the Payne's gray to fill in all of the silhouette. Starting with El Capitan. Okay, Now we're gonna move on towards where we've got Half Dome. And as needed, you can always add some more Payne's Gray. Okay, so next towards the bottom, I'm just gonna apply just plain black right around here. And I'm gonna have where the Payne's Gray and the black meet, I'm going to make sure I have some texture in this borderline because that'll mimic some trees. Before we add any detail where the black kind of blended into the Payne's Gray, I want to take a slightly damp, just moderately dry, but still a little damp, size 16 brush, and I want to incorporate some highlights by lifting using good pressure with my brush. And I want to lift just some of the paint off of the face of El Capitan, which is this structure right here. I'm just using the belly of the brush and some nice pressure to lift. Now I want to carry that just around where Half Dome is. And you may need to kind of come back and relift some paint as it bleeds. But here's Half Dome, and I'm just going to lift some of the paint off the face of Half Dome. And a little bit towards the right as well. Just a little bit where the trees would meet the valley. I'm just gonna slightly lift here. It's very subtle, it's not too drastic. Then I'm gonna just lift right on these two peaks as well. Okay, and I'm just gonna let this set before we add any more kind of deep contrast and texture with some of the tree texture in the valley below. While this area dries, I want to start to add some stars into our sky, and I am using some white gouache paint. It's very opaque, so it'll go really well over the dark sky. You can also use a white chalkboard marker or acrylic paint, and I'm just using this nice delicate size 2 Princeton brush. And just using light pressure with my hand, I am going to incorporate some stars just irregularly placed throughout the sky. And before I get going more on the stars, I do want to add a shooting star, And I like to add a shooting star where it's quite dark, so not so much in this lighter area. So all I like to do that is just do a crooked, really thin dash line using light pressure with my hand. There we go. And it may take a couple layers of the white gouache to really let the shooting star pop, but from here on, I'm just gonna keep incorporating my stars. Next up, I just want to do a slight angled cliff face here that's slightly darker, and that's going to be where Bridal Veil Falls is going to be placed. So it's just a angled straight line right here, slightly. Well, not really straight if it's angled, but an angled line right there, and then just a kind of jagged horizontal line going off towards the right. And I'm just gonna let that set, and in the meantime, I just wanna do some kind of just texture right in this valley floor, and that's going to just kind of help mimic trees. And so just to start, I'm doing a nice deep saturation with my size 4 Princeton brush here of this black all towards the bottom, because that's going to be the deepest and darkest part here. So it's just slightly curving up towards the right and left. Once I have this nice deep saturation of black, I'm going to switch gears back to my size 2 brush, and carrying on with the black, I just want to get some of this kind of just vertical line texture, just very jagged, where the black is going to meet some of the lighter colors, and some of this jagged texture is going to be taller and some shorter, but it's just very loose. So we're not really doing super structured pine trees necessarily, but just this kind of toothier texture that's jagged using the tip of the brush where the black meets the Payne's gray is just going to kind of mimic the essence of the forest. Last step of this painting, I'm just gonna paint a little waterfall where this mountaintop ridge is. And I am just using white gouache, and I'm going to kind of buff it out a little bit so it's not too stark white. So I'm going to use a little bit of water to just help kind of blend it out, and it'll lighten up even more once it's dry. So I'm just going to have it billow slightly towards the bottom and widen here. I hope that you enjoyed this watercolor Yosemite galaxy painting tutorial. Be sure to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss any future tutorials on my channel.